But then if you're a human being, for example, then again it goes back to, if you're not something, then what are you? So if you're saying you're not this black, you're questioning this black skin, then my question then is, what then are you? If then you're going to say, I'm going to question, when I wake up in the morning, I look at myself in the mirror, what do I see? Do I see the black skin, or do I see Toy Boy Shake staring back at me, the same face that looked back at me the last, 21 years of my life? And then again, when you now talk about being black, you say, well, I'm not black, I'm a human being. But then what does it mean to be a human being? Does it mean that we have a heart, that we have a brain, we have lungs, we've got, we're Homo sapiens? Is that what it means to be now a human being? You see what I'm saying? Or does a human being mean something else and something more? You see what I'm saying? And so then the question that we can start asking ourselves is that, yes, I say I'm black. What does that mean? Very, very much so. I'm very influenced by political struggles and movements. I've seen black oppression. So maybe it is, I see myself as black based off of oppression I've seen on black people. So maybe in a sense, if I now question that, if you were to remove that oppression, would I see myself as black? Or then would I even see myself as African? Because Africa in itself, Africa's never called Africa Africa. We didn't, most Africans back in the, prior to Europeans coming to us, most of us didn't really have a conception of this wider thing called Africa. Even today people don't. You know what I'm saying? You go to my village, most people that don't really know what's happening in Tunisia, what's happening in Senegal, what's happening in Tanzania. They just know themselves in their immediate environment. So then I must now step back and say, well, what does African mean? Is maybe me defining myself as an African, a European influence? So now I don't like that kind of thought, because now it's saying that I'm defining myself off what my enemies told me I was. And so then maybe I need to now think and say, well then now I sit back and I can say, well,
and when you start trying to define African, you will go to a stage where it doesn't even mean anything to be African. Because what I will tell you is that if it's not because you and I, we met in this campus, we became friends, taking a Namibian and a Nigerian and put them in a place, they're so different that you will ask yourself, why these people are just from Namibia and Niger, they really know that.
But then again, if you put someone from France or someone from India in that room with these three guys, you may, for example, you may see more similarities between the Namibian and Nigerian, which then you can now talk about now an African identity or an Africanness in definition to something so different from yourself. You see what I'm saying?
I actually think maybe culturally an educated Nigerian may have more similarity to an educated Frenchman. Why? Because of that colonial history, which put them so much together. While when you take Namibia and Niger,
not much contact.
I don't think when you go, it's hard to in a way trace the history and see where they even used to be a same cultural or political or anything entity.
Well, I think a lot of people have a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. It's the difference between a struggle. You start with one word, a struggle for a success. And how did you go about it? Hard work. Hard work may be different, but it's still hard work. Well, in this situation, I did this to overcome. Well, in this situation, I did this to overcome. The common goal was they overcame.
Yeah.
So it's a connection.
Oh, okay, yeah. That
makes sense.
I like
now,
that.
and with the thing, it was when you, because I think I should have been a philosophy major because.
But some people will say that's now assimilating yourself into white society if you did do that. But
true. But when you try to define what it is to be black, I think that's an endless journey. And to a certain extent, if you try to pin one definition on it, you will go crazy. It's just like if you say, if you use a word and you try to say, I want to define the word love. What is love? Love. People say love is blind. People say love is the most wonderful thing in the world. People say love hurts.
Yeah.
Well, what is love? It's not a clear-cut definition, so there's not a clear-cut definition to what it means to be black or African American or whatever, and that's the beauty of the thing, especially being black, because if you look at it in the perspective of the rainbow or the colors, it's a lot of colors that go into black, so you can't really be defined. Black is every color in the rainbow.
So is white. If you look at white, is it white? When you split white into it with a mirror, you're gonna see red, blue, green. You're gonna see it all split.
Yeah, everything there for me.
But then again, I think it goes back to, and Mushatu, I want to see what you think about this too, because like Ibrahim, again, I asked Ibrahim Ibrahim asked me a question, or I asked him a question based off of a question he asked me. Our friendship. He talked about our friendship. What we're really talking about now is identity. What does that even mean? Take me and Neil, for example. At this point in time, if you were to sit down and write what makes us friends, I can assure you, last year, you compared the two lists, say we would do it last year and then do it this year, we're going to have two completely different lists.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe even from today to next week, 2 weeks ago, 6 months from now. Identity, as Ibrahim, I think, really elegantly put it, is so dynamic and ever changing. It's like waves. It keeps on moving, crashing, like kind of the way like atoms. They come together, they split apart, they disperse, they come together, and they create something new. You see what I'm saying? And so maybe that's why, for me, I can't lie to you. I'm not going to, I like these conversations on identity, but I will not beat myself up over it because I see in my mind an end game where the confused, I'll go crazy. You know what I'm saying? I have things to do with myself before I go crazy. So the thing is that I cannot, but it's good to push these kinds of things because, again, one thing I like that Ibrahim always says, I refuse to live in an illusion. You see what I'm saying? I refuse to lie to myself and tell myself I'm thinking something when actually it's not. You see what I'm saying? Because a lot of people will say, well, I'm black and I'm this and I'm black and I'm this and I believe in the motherland, etc., etc. But yet no one will give any bit of money for kids who are starving in Tanzania, kids who are starving in maybe kids who are starving maybe in numerous countries in Africa. They won't even educate themselves on events that are happening in the motherland. But yet you want to call yourself African American, which is why sometimes you'll hear me say Black American because the African part for me, I don't see it with me. African/Black Americans. You see what I'm saying? Because if you truly care so much about African America, what have you been doing to educate yourself on African affairs? I actually can find more Chinese people or Europeans or South Americans who know more about Africa than most African Americans do.
Yeah.
But yet you want me to call you an African American, which is why I say you're a Black American. Because for me, I see the black parts of it because I'm a Black African. So that blackness is where we can come together. But I'm not an American. I don't associate at all with being an American. However, I'm living in America, and my mother is Black American. I'm entitled to American citizenship. You see what I'm saying? But then again, what does that mean? Now, we talk about identity again. Identity again, ever changing, ever shifting. 4 years ago, I'll tell you, completely something different. And maybe 4 years from now, I marry maybe a Puerto Rican woman, and then maybe I have a different conception of identity. Because now I'm like, well, then maybe what am I? You see what I'm saying?
Actually, that's a good point. I just want to add on, like, this whole thing about identifying yourself as something and yet really not caring about the whole, everything else that concerns